Listen properly.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Voetsak Files, the show that pokes the bear, rattles the cage, and says what others are too afraid to say. We are again starting this episode on a somber note, something Ambassador Brent Bozell also touched on during his Senate hearing. The barbaric farm attacks ravaging this country. Beloved farmers Jan and Elna Doeke of Schiekfontein were ambushed at their home around 2300 hours on 28 October by 5 armed, masked savages. Elna stepped outside and was immediately overpowered. Her desperate screams brought Jan rushing to help, but before he could react, the attackers stormed in and shot him in the neck. Elna was savagely beaten, suffering severe facial and head injuries, while their home was ransacked. The attackers fled in the couple's Mahindra bakkie, loaded with stolen goods. Both victims are in critical condition in hospital. This barbaric assault on two elderly, beloved members of the Heidelberg farming community has left residents shocked, furious, and heartbroken. And just 2 days later, a couple was attacked on their farm between Lanseria and the Lion Park. And unsurprisingly, the woman was beaten so savagely that she's now in hospital. My deepest condolences to the latest victims of these savages, likely inspired by the empty-skulled Julius Malema's moronic "Kill the Boer" chant. Okay, now that we have exposed more EFF-inspired attacks, I need to apologize again. I know I promised to drop that expose today, the one about the pre-owned car industry and how you're getting ripped off. But again, there's been a more important development we need to address, something so crucial that I once again had to hit pause on that episode and bring you this instead. And that is the real threat that has now materialized against law-abiding citizens with firearms. And believe me, I speak from years of experience when I tell you straight. The process has begun for this corrupt government to achieve something they've been working on for years, to literally disarm our citizens and leave them at the mercy of a breed of criminal, unlike any in a civilized nation. You just have to watch this, if you are as alarmed about this real threat as you should be. But before we dive into this explosive subject, before we hand out today's Empty Skull Award, here's a quick reminder. I share a short excerpt from one of my books in every episode. If it leaves you wanting more, you can order a digital copy of either book by simply emailing me at author.skulk@gmail.com. They're R75 each. That's, listen properly, R200 less than retail, or R125 for both. That's a full R400 less than retail. And every cent goes to the animal charity I support, which feeds and cares for a colony of feral fur babies who are completely dependent on human compassion to survive. Well, you'll soon be able to grab the digital copies, plus official Voetsak Files merchandise, once my new website is up and running. But for now, we'll do it the old school way. Email me, tell me which copy you want, and I'll send you an invoice with the EFT details. So I want to quickly share a story of one of the many heartbreaking stories from Sterrewag Ferals, and show you exactly what the funds from the sale of my digital books are used for. Memphis, a beautiful and gentle feral boy, was tragically hit by a car. He suffered multiple fractures to his front leg and wandered in excruciating pain, unable to stand properly. After days of struggling, he was trapped and taken to the vet. Sadly, the x-rays revealed that his leg was so badly shattered that the only way to give him a pain-free life was to amputate. The surgery went well, and our brave Memphis is now learning to adapt and balance on 3 legs. He's safe, loved, and recovering. But Unfortunately, the procedure left Sterrebach Ferals with a 4,462 rand vet bill. So, on behalf of Sterrebach Ferals, I'd like to ask you, if you would like to help, if you prefer, you can donate any amount, however small, to the veterinarian's account using Sterrebach Ferals as the reference. Every contribution, no matter how small, truly helps, and I will personally acknowledge every supporter in the next episode. All the details are in the comments below. A special thanks to the following viewers for their orders: Paul Torrente, Cool J, Kay Steele, Chris Ehlers, Blaine, and Willem Grobler. Guys, I really appreciate the support and know you are going to enjoy my Pulitzer Award-winning books. So, without further ado, here's this week's excerpt from my second book.
I spent the next 2 hours studying SOPs and operational plans from previous VIP visits and protests at the embassy, as well as a classified document titled Emergency Action Plan, Decision Points. The plan provides an accurate perspective of South Africa through the embassy's eyes and outlines how we will respond to specific threats within the country, up to the worst-case scenario, when everything goes south. Some of the official views raise my eyebrows, leaving me to wonder how the South African government would react to such policy perspectives. One paragraph in particular is especially disturbing, reminding me of exactly what Seth had said. Violent crime is commonplace, with crime rates at critical levels. The South African Police Service lack experienced, motivated personnel. Slow response times and very low arrest/prosecution rates pose a serious threat. The government is occasionally responsive to U.S. government concerns on law enforcement issues, including the protection of USG personnel and facilities. Just great, I think to myself when my desktop phone rings for the first time. The small LED screen displays SRSO. I pick up and Don says, "Come to my office," like a schoolmaster summoning a delinquent. "On my way, Don," I replied, leaving without delay and wondering if I had already done something wrong so soon into my tour of duty. As I exited, Don was already waiting outside his office. "Let's go," he said, and I followed like a puppy. "Going to introduce you to the AMBO and DCM," he explained. I kept quiet during the short elevator ride to the third floor, which was only accessible with a secret code typed into the elevator's keypad. The door opened to the ambassador's reception area, where his PA greeted us and promptly led us into his office. The ambassador sat behind his desk, his weathered face telling stories of years spent in the diplomatic trenches. A reddish hue on his cheeks hinted at a fondness for bourbon. There was a gruffness in his demeanor, the kind that comes from navigating endless crises and carrying the weight of heavy responsibilities. He rose from his chair, extending a hand. "Ambassador Taylor," he introduced himself formally. I reciprocated just as formally. "Special Agent Hunter McCallum, pleased to meet you, Mr. Ambassador." "And this is DCM Heather Merritt," he said, pointing to a short, stubby, and rather unimpressive lady in the corner, who laboriously got up and shook my hand with a lifeless grip, half-heartedly forcing out a "hi," as if reminding me of my lowly position in the hierarchy. "She's going to be a fun-filled ball of joy," I sarcastically thought to myself. Don immediately guided me out as if to say we shouldn't take up any more of their valuable time.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that excerpt and are already emailing me your orders. Now then, it's time to award the Empty Skull Award to the biggest empty skull who has truly outdone themselves in recent events. So, without further ado, the Empty Skull Award goes to none other than Karen Burger, the driving force behind the government intelligence project, that is, the open letter, by a small group of 44 Afrikaners attacking AfriForum, the Solidarity Movement, and President Donald Trump. Now, I wonder, is this a group Charlize Theron, referred to as the only 44 Afrikaans-speaking people left in the world? But anyway, Burger was employed by South Africa's Secret Service for many years. She was part of the service's Foreign Affairs Division, which, among other things, carried out intelligence work through embassies disguised as regular embassy staff members. And very interestingly, she worked at the South African Embassy in the United States until the end of last year. Makes you think, doesn't it? Maybe that's why she's so keen to criticize President Trump's Afrikaner refugee program. She is, unsurprisingly, now a director at the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, DIRCO, working for Zane Dangor, the Director General of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, another Palestinian scarf-wearing Hamas cheerleader. Well, congratulations, Karen. You have just proved that everyone working at DIRCO would be a worthy recipient of the Empty Skull Award. By the way, if you haven't seen my episode about one of her senior former intelligence colleagues, none other than Mo Sheikh, be sure to check it out. You can't miss it. All right, now that we've got that out of the way, I want to thank you for the great response in the last episode. We got more than 180 comments. I wish I could show them all, but I've chosen a few that really stood out. If you'd rather jump straight to the main story, feel free, but I promise these are worth sticking around for. Let's check them out. Andre Potgieter said, "Trust me, the African national corruption do not care about Bozell or the USA. They are going to laugh him off. President Trump needs to severely sanction the ANC leaders, freeze their overseas looted assets, and impose travel bans." Monica Kiek said, "Think the American embassy should move to Cape Town, safer and a functional province." Well, Monica, there have been many calls for the US government to do just that, including from prominent voices like Rob Hershoff. It will certainly prove a point. Francois Sauer also said he was looking forward to Brent Bozell coming to South Africa. George V. Sellar said, "Anyone who still thinks we have a government is naive. What we have is a criminal gang pretending to be a government to line their pockets." Ma Baker said, "I haven't seen any other channel sharing a view on this subject, so it's very welcome." JCL said, "Yossi Boet, this rates as one of the best chats I've ever seen. Your balance of facts and humor, content and intel is top of the pops. Share, folks, far and wide." Well, JCL, thanks so much for your glittering comment. One of the nicest I've ever received. I really appreciate it. And anyone, please listen to JCL. Share far and wide. Dorota Kaweka said, "What a beauty. Thank you." Dorota, I assume you were not referring to me, but to Jesmo, my cat. Malcolm M. said, "It's almost pointless having a US embassy in South Africa. The ANC have tossed them the bird so many times in recent months, I'm surprised they don't just write us off into the dustbin of history." Well, Malcolm, I think you've nailed it. That's one reason I suggested they cut their presence here. Honestly, if I ran the project, only the US consulate in Cape Town would remain. Andre van Aert said, "Organize for Ambassador Bozell to visit farm murder sites." Andre Smith said, "So good, the Skull Award." Well, thanks, Andres. I also believe it was one of my few great creations. Mickey Collins said, "Dude, I'm watching it again. What a fascinating take on current shenanigans. Thank you for simplifying this entertainment circus." Well, thanks a lot, Mickey. Great comment. And I hope YouTube gives me credit for every one of your views. Alan Gill said, "It's going to be tit for tat. Ramaphosa won't accept his credentials because he will be advised this may cause an uproar against him from the radical leftists." Well, Alan, all I can say is that will certainly be the death knell for US-South African relations. Graham King asked, "Can Ramaphosa refuse to accept Bozell in South Africa?" Well, Graham, as I said, technically he can, But it would go down in history as the worst of brain-dead decisions. Serenity said, brilliant diverting monologue, superbly delivered. Thank you, Serenity. Peter Pumpkin Eater said, learning more about the person behind the show. Oh, it can't be me. I get to like your show even more. Well, Peter, I do have a sparkling personality, don't I? I just have to make sure that the skeletons in my closet don't come tumbling out. Petru Shingalana said, mooi foto van haar, sy dink sy is so slim. Wel, Petru, net om seker te maak, ek nie maar nie verwys na hierdie foto. Roelof Maria said, Trump is what we needed and won't take all of this nonsense. Lindy Lambert said, great show as usual. Besides being very interesting, what I enjoy the mostest today was the handsome cat of yours who made his unannounced appearance. I say high five to that. His timing was perfect. Well, Lindy, I'm sure Jesmo will appreciate being described as handsome. Joel Stradom said the excerpt from your book captured my feeling about the flag. The fact that the Oranje Blanje Blou is hate speech is even more disgraceful. Martin van Vuren said, send the Marines. Well, Martin, on that note, I just have to say, it was the honor of a lifetime working with the Marines. South Africans have no idea what a true professional soldier is. These guys are the best of the best. Another one from Pietro Shangalana who said, we have 10 beautiful cats. Well, Pietro, I like you already. Our number is, let's just say, classified, due to a case of failed fostering. Laura de Wet said, I'm following you as a fellow cat lover. Well, Laura, I was hoping you were following me because of this amazing show. But anyway, I think that Mario and Jesmo managed to get me a few more subscribers at least. Alright, that's as far as the comments go for today. Please remember, I do read every single one, I promise you. And I really appreciate you taking your precious time to share your thoughts. So, please keep them coming. Now, at last, you say, let me get into today's episode. One that is not a theory, and it's not speculation. And, again, I want to reassure you, this episode is definitely not one of those content creator hot takes made by someone who's never set foot inside the system they're criticizing. Because I was there. I worked at the South African Police Service's Central Firearms Register from 1998 to 2001. Right under Major General Jaco Botma, the last competent CFR commander before the empty skulls pushed him out unlawfully. And yes, they had to pay millions after the court tore them to pieces for it. And I personally knew many of those senior white officers they also forced out, men and women who carried this country's firearms system on their shoulders until corruption, nepotism, and political rot drove them out too. So believe me when I tell you, I know what's happening at the CFR. And yes, the ANC has started disarming citizens. Just a little bit of background. During an oversight visit by Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Police to the Central Firearms Register in 2021, it became clear that the CFR is dysfunctional and cannot fulfill its mandate as set out in the Firearms Controls Act of 2000. Files piled up in corridors on every floor due to a lack of space, the poor use of IT systems, staff shortages, and even a building which has been declared unsafe are all contributing factors to the chaos we saw at the CFR. Staff morale is at an all-time low under these conditions, resulting in rock-bottom levels of productivity. And, believe me, it didn't look like this when I worked there. The corridors were at least open and clean. So, let's start with the law itself. Back in my day, I actually helped draft the Firearms Control Act of 2000, was a balanced piece of legislation, not perfect, but workable. It recognized that self-defense is a legitimate reason for firearm ownership in a country where the poor police response times can be the difference between life and death. Now, fast forward to 2025, and what do we see? There's no publicly gazetted bill yet, but every credible sign points to a renewed push to tighten civilian firearm access. They're doing it quietly, in NEDLAC meetings, behind closed doors, without a single firearm owners association in the room. And guess what's on the table again? The same toxic idea from 2021, removing self-defense as a valid reason to own a firearm. Yes, that 2020 draft bill, the one that caused public outrage, is back from the dead. The one that wanted to strip citizens the right to protect their families, their homes, and their lives. AfriForum blew the whistle, warning of a secret revival of that bill. And now, all the evidence points in one direction. They're preparing the groundwork for it. But here's the clever part. They're not coming straight for your guns. Not yet. They're coming for everything around them. First, private security. From March to May this year, the incompetent police ministry proposed new restrictions on when and where private security officers may carry firearms. Bans in malls, schools, tighter limits on semi-auto rifles, which is some of the proposals. And the industry called it what it rightly is, an attempt to disarm the first responders in a country where SAPS can't even protect their own police stations. Second, blank guns. Yes, even harmless, non-lethal blank-firing pistols. The government suddenly wants to ban or strictly control their import, calling them convertible weapons. But let's be honest here. If they're panicking over blank guns, you know the agenda isn't safety, it's control. And here's the bottom line. Even without a new bill in Parliament, the policy's momentum is unmistakable. The government is tightening the noose, one small regulation at a time. Let's not forget what the 2021 draft tried to do. It proposed first ending self-defense as a reason to own a gun. Can you believe these brain-dead morons? That is only the most justified reason for owning a gun in the first place. Secondly, capping how many firearms you can own. Even making sport and hunting licensing nearly impossible. Forcing stricter record-keeping and storage requirements. And, of course, tightening oversight of private security. It didn't pass because public outrage buried it, but now it's creeping back, one amendment at a time. And what's the pattern? Every time the state fails to stop crime, it blames you, the law-abiding citizen, and it punishes you, the one who plays by the rules while the gangs, syndicates, and corrupt politicians keep their illegal arsenals untouched. Now, let's talk about the heart of the system, the Central Firearms Registry, or what is left of it. A news report from November 2025 laid it bare. Backlogs and breakdowns, firearm license chaos and industry failures in South Africa. AfriForum exposed how thousands of applicants have been waiting for months, sometimes years, for license approvals, renewals, or just simple feedback. The SAPS claimed they were working tirelessly, but applicants call it what it is, a dead system. The ballistics unit, a freaking national embarrassment. More than 29,000 firearms linked to criminal cases are sitting untested. That means murder weapons, just lying in storage, untraced, while the killers walk free to murder again. And the experts agree, the CFR's tracking system is broken, digitization stalled, resources gone, corruption everywhere. I can personally confirm that. Even 12 years after I left the SAPS, desperate applicants still called me, begging for help, even for just a number that someone at the CFR would actually pick up. That happens when competence is replaced with corruption, when the experienced officers are forced out, and the new appointees can't even tell the difference between a serial number. I want to tell you a story I never thought I'd have to tell again. The time I had to rescue the US Embassy from South Africa's own gun licensing disaster. You know, I honestly thought I was done with the South African Police Service, and especially the circus they called the Central Firearms Register. I was quite content knowing I'd never have to deal with them again. But no, life had other plans. To my surprise, I found myself right back in that pit of incompetence. This time, not even for myself, but on behalf of the US Embassy. What followed was more than 2 years of pure torture, dealing with the CFR. Bureaucratic nightmare so absurd it could have made the grown man cry. First, we had to get the US Embassy officially accredited, something that should have taken weeks, but instead dragged on endlessly, thanks to the so-called officials who didn't even know the contents of their own Firearms Control Act. Just imagine that, me having to explain their own legislation to them in the presence of top US government officials. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, came the real battle. Fighting tooth and nail to get approval for 65 Glock firearm licenses, not for civilians, not for collectors, but for American law enforcement officers working here in South Africa, protecting US personnel. And still they fought it, delayed it, and stumbled through it like a drunk on payday. But you know what the best part of all this was? Americans actually realized how significant that achievement was. A breakthrough so much so that they honored me with one of their coveted awards. Yes, you heard me right. A former South African police officer receiving an award from the Americans for successfully fighting through South Africa's own police bureaucracy. How's that for irony? Being recognized for battling the very system I worked for, cutting through the incompetence and corruption just so American law enforcement officers could do their jobs here. This isn't just a bureaucratic failure, it's strategic neglect. When the system collapses, the state has the perfect excuse to say, see, the firearm registry is unmanageable. Let's tighten the law. They destroy it from the inside, then use that destruction to justify the disarming of the rest of us. And make no mistake, South Africa's firearm-related murders have almost doubled since 2009, from 18 a day to 33 a day. Criminals are emboldened, police are demoralized, and the ANC's answer is, let's make sure citizens can't fight back. You tell me, does that sound like governance? Or does it sound like a calculated move to weaken the last line of self-defense ordinary South Africans have? And the first step, disarmament. Yes, that's the first step. AfriForum, opposition parties, and firearm rights groups are right to sound the alarm, because history repeats itself, slowly at first and all at once. There's a policy trajectory here, secret NEDLAC talks with no citizen oversight, restrictions on private security and non-lethal guns, a CFR system so broken it's almost unusable, and whispers of reviving a bill that erases self-defense altogether. That's not coincidence, that's convergence. Parallel regulations tightening from all sides, so that when the next amendment finally lands in Parliament, the infrastructure for disarmament is already in place. Here's what to watch. A gazetted draft of the Firearms Control Amendment Bill 2025-26. That is the smoking gun, the outcome of underhanded NEDLAC negotiations. And be sure, if firearm owner organizations are excluded again, it's proof of a predetermined outcome. And finally, whether Section 13, the self-defense clause, survives or disappears, if they dare to strike that clause again, yes, then the ANC's disarmament agenda is official. Listen, I'm not telling you this as an armchair critic. I'm telling you this as someone who spent years inside that very system, who helped write the law before they twisted it, who commanded one of the well-functioning firearm registration centers for 5 years, before they closed them all down and forced that responsibility back onto their already overburdened police stations. I watched the decay, year after year, until the whole structure rotted from within. So when I say the ANC has started disarming South Africans, I'm not speculating. I'm witnessing the same playbook, just 25 years later. So what can you do? First of all, stay informed. Support organizations like AfriForum and Gun Owners of South Africa. And don't let them sell you the lie that you'll be safer unarmed in a violent country where 70 people are murdered every single day. Because when government disarms the good, only the bad remain armed. And that's exactly what the ANC wants. A powerless public and a population too scared to resist. Okay, that's it for this week. Please tell me what you think in the comments. I really want to hear your views, and I'll feature the best ones in the next episode. And please hit like, subscribe, and share it far and wide, because silence is exactly what these empty skulls rely on. And it will help this channel to keep growing. If you really like this episode, consider becoming a member. You'll be supporting a worthy cause while we stir the pot so you don't fall asleep when they steal your rights. So, until next time, please stay safe and cheers.